From the very beginning, Percy Jackson was never normal. At 12 years old, he ripped the horn off the Minotaur with his bare hands. Not long after, he stood toe-to-toe with Ares, the god of war, and walked away alive. And that still wasn't his peak. Percy would go on to summon hurricanes, trigger a volcanic eruption at Mount St. Helens, command entire ships with his mind, and survive Tartarus. These weren't isolated moments, they followed a pattern. When Percy arrived at Camp Jupiter with no memory of who he was, the Roman demigods felt it immediately. Some genuinely believed he might be a god in disguise. Within a week, he was named Praetor. So the question becomes unavoidable. Why was Percy Jackson so much stronger than everyone else? Theory 1. Fear never controlled him. One of the earliest differences between Percy and other demigods has nothing to do with power. It's fear. Most demigods hesitate. They assess the risk, imagine the outcome, and then act. Percy skips that step. That instinct comes from his childhood, an abusive stepfather, constant school expulsions, a life where stability never existed. He grew up reacting, not planning. So when monsters appear, Percy doesn't freeze, he moves. That pattern repeats across every major fight: the Minotaur, Medusa, Ares, Kronos' armies. Percy rarely enters with a clear plan, but he always takes the first action. Fear is still there. It just never gets control. And that creates an advantage most demigods never develop. In a world where hesitation gets you killed, Percy is always the one moving first. But acting first doesn't explain everything, because plenty of demigods are brave. Very few reach Percy's level. Theory 2. Percy was protected by prophecy. Percy wasn't interchangeable. He was required. He stood at the center of the great prophecy, a child destined to either preserve Olympus or bring about its destruction. Later, he became a key part of the prophecy of seven, tied to another war that reshaped the balance between gods, giants, and mortals. In this world, prophecies don't sit quietly in the background. They apply pressure. Gods respect them. Titans can't escape them. Even monsters end up moving in ways that align with them. So when Percy survives events that should have killed him, coincidence starts to feel unlikely. Mount St. Helens, the Titan War, the Giant War, Tartarus. Each time, Percy makes it through situations that erase other demigods. Not because he's untouchable, because he needs to reach the next point. Other demigods tied to prophecy, like Jason Grace or Leo Valdez, follow a similar pattern. They survive long enough to fulfill their role. But there's a limit to what prophecy explains. It can keep someone alive. It doesn't make them dominant. And Percy wasn't just surviving these battles, he was changing them. So something else had to be at play. Theory 3. Percy's connection to Poseidon was different. Not all gods empower their children in the same way. Zeus operates through control and hierarchy. Hades operates through distance and fear. Poseidon is different. The sea doesn't respond to commands. It reacts to emotion, anger, desperation, calm, instinct. Percy doesn't treat it like a tool. He syncs with it. That difference changes everything. Where most demigods draw from their parents' domain in controlled bursts, Percy's power expands with his emotional state. The more pressure he's under, the stronger the response becomes. That's why his abilities spike in moments where others would collapse. And Poseidon reinforces that connection. He claims Percy publicly. He intervenes more openly than most gods would risk. When Percy is threatened, Poseidon reacts like a father, not a distant deity. That creates alignment between them. Percy isn't pulling power from the sea. At times it feels like the sea is acting through him. And that's why his limits are harder to define. But even that doesn't fully explain it, because other children of powerful gods exist. But none of them reach this level, though. Theory 4. Percy grew through pressure. Most demigods reach a point where their abilities stabilize. They discover what they can do, improve within that range, and then level out. Percy doesn't follow that pattern. Every major event forces change. Each war pushes him further. Each loss removes hesitation. Each near-death experience sharpens how he thinks and reacts. He doesn't rely on structured training. He learns through consequence. By the time he reaches Tartarus, Percy is no longer relying on raw strength. He's making decisions under pressure that most demigods wouldn't survive long enough to learn from. Timing, control, restraint. Those traits are built through repeated exposure to extreme situations, and unlike the gods who remain largely unchanged, Percy adapts every time he's tested. That creates momentum. His power doesn't stay at one level, it compounds. Each experience builds on the last, pushing him further beyond the limits most demigods operate within. But growth alone doesn't explain everything, because Percy's abilities start to cross into something else entirely. Theory 5. Percy inherited more than just divine power. Sally Jackson was never ordinary. Like Rachel Dare and May Castellan, she could see through the mist. She recognized the mythological world without needing divine help. That alone places her in a rare group. But there are hints her potential went further. Apollo noticed her. Poseidon respected her. And in the wrath of the triple goddess, Hecate speaks to Sally directly and recognizes that she had the potential to practice magic. She never pursued it. Life didn't allow it. But potential like that doesn't disappear. In some cases, it carries forward. We've seen something similar before. Hazel Levesque inherited heightened magical sensitivity through her mother, a practitioner of dark magic. That connection amplified Hazel's abilities far beyond what most demigods can access. Percy shows signs of something similar. His abilities extend beyond basic control of water. He influences environments, resists forces that overwhelm others, and adapts to conditions that should break him. It doesn't behave like a single source of power. It feels layered. If Sally carried dormant magical potential, Percy may have inherited more than just Poseidon's abilities. He may have inherited something that never had the chance to develop in her. And that could explain why his power doesn't follow the usual rules. Theory 6. Percy was shaped by his name. Sally didn't choose Percy's name at random. She chose Perseus, not Achilles, not Theseus, not Icarus, Perseus. A hero who survived, a hero who completed impossible quests and lived to tell the story. That choice matters. In this world, names carry weight. In the Kane Chronicles, true names hold identity, essence, and power. In The Son of Magic, words spoken with intent can shape reality. Names are not just labels. They carry meaning. When Sally named Percy, she made a decision rooted in hope, in defiance, in survival. And Percy follows that pattern again and again. He survives encounters that should end him. He completes quests that others fail. He reaches the end of stories that were never meant to be survived. That consistency starts to feel intentional, not guaranteed, but influenced. As if the role he was given shaped how events unfolded around him. And when you combine that with everything else, the pattern becomes clearer. But there's still one final piece to consider. Theory 7. Percy breaks the rules. Up to this point, every explanation tries to fit Percy into the system. This is where that stops working. Because Percy doesn't follow the rules of his own world. Demigods are tied to their parents' domain. Percy goes beyond it. In Tartarus, he controls poison. Not water, poison. A completely different domain tied to something far older and more dangerous, and he doesn't simply resist it. He turns it against its source, against Aklis, a primordial being. Percy forces her own power back onto her, something even gods approach with caution. That shouldn't be possible. Not for a demigod, not even for a child of the big three. And it's not an isolated moment. Percy repeatedly pushes past limits that other demigods can't reach. His power expands into areas that should remain out of bounds. At that point, the question changes. It's no longer, why is Percy stronger? It becomes, why do the rules stop applying to him? So what made Percy Jackson so strong? The answer might be all of it, but if you had to pick one theory that actually explains his power, which one is it? Let me know in the comments. And click the video on screen for more Percy Jackson breakdowns.